With Virgin Media, get smooth, lightning-fast M125 broadband. Just £25 a month and no setup fee. And now it's even easier to switch to the provider awarded best broadband experience. Yeah, that's smooth. Virgin Media. See what you can do. Visit virginmedia.com.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Good morning, North America, good afternoon, Europe, and good evening to everyone joining us from India. This is US Election Watch. I'm Allister D'Souza in Washington, D.C. The headlines. Less than 30 days to go before Election Day, and yes, Trump and Harris remain neck and neck in key states. Harris and Trump commemorate the October 7th attack on Israel. Harris marks the day with a tree planting ceremony in D.C., Trump to attend a memorial event in Florida. Trump says he thinks he should get 100% of the Jewish votes. Trump claims Netanyahu is not listening to Biden at all. Harris and her running mate Tim Walz kick off a week-long media blitz. Harris tries to gain an advantage in the polls with more media interviews. With less than a month to go for Election Day, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump continue their final push for the White House. Both candidates are locked in a neck-and-neck race in all those battleground states from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt. In this exceedingly close race, both candidates are trying to bag undecided voters in the crucial swing states. Harris and Walz are upping their media appearances, while Trump is targeting his strongholds. Now, today marks 1 year since Hamas's surprise attack on Israel, where around 1,200 people, mostly Israeli civilians, were killed. 250 hostages were captured. Currently, around 100 hostages have not been returned, a third of whom are believed to be dead. Since that day, on October 7th, things have just gotten worse. More than 41,000 people have been reportedly killed in Gaza since the start of the war, as Israel continues to mount its offensive to wipe out Hamas. Now, fighting has expanded to Lebanon, where hundreds there have been killed and over 1 million people displaced as Israel tries to cripple Hezbollah, a group backed by Iran. Now, Israel is left fighting battles on multiple fronts. Israel appears to be inching closer to a direct conflict with Iran. All of this as the US heads to the polls in that hotly contested election. Now, let's get you more on this. We're joined by Jennifer Smits-Kilgus. She has 15 years of experience working in the US Senate and the White House, along with other agencies. She's now a senior lecturer at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. We're also joined by also Republican strategist, that's Matt Klink. He joins us as well this morning here on NDTV. Now, Jennifer, let me come to you first. The US election is just weeks away. A senior Middle East analyst at the Hudson Institute, a think tank, says that Israel will do what it wants during this period and before the next president takes office in January. Israel will step up its attacks, essentially. Others say that Israel will only continue to be emboldened by this election cycle. What's your take on the issue?
My take on the issue is that nobody, no candidate, nor will President Biden make any kind of definitive decision or make a definitive statement on what is going on in the Middle East. So what Trump has said is that he said that Israel should give retaliatory bombs to the Iranian nuclear plants. Kamala Harris dodged a question on 60 Minutes the other day about whether or not Netanyahu was a close ally, yes or no. So Trump will continue to make incendiary statements, but I don't think anyone will give a definitive plan forward until after the elections.
All right, Matt, what about you? What do you think? Is Israel going to use this as a window of opportunity?
Israel is going to do whatever it sees in its best interests. And in the Biden and Harris administration, I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government have made the calculation that while America may say all the right things that they're behind Israel, the reality is that they're not. And in your case in point is the Biden-Harris administration have delayed key weapons. They have encouraged ceasefires, or when Iran bombed Israel the first time, they said, quote unquote, take the win and don't respond. So what you're seeing Israel increasingly do is they're just not listening to the Biden and Harris administration. They're going to do what's in their best national security interest. And I think that Benjamin Netanyahu has made the calculation that he would rather get rid of Hamas and, to the greatest extent possible, Hezbollah now, because he could have a very unreliable partner in the White House if Mrs. Harris wins on November 5th.
Jennifer, the key swing state of Michigan has one of the largest Arab American populations in the U.S. One high-level member of that community has endorsed Trump. He's the mayor of Hamtramck now. And if you recall, also Arab American groups wanted a pro-Palestinian speaker to be given a speaking slot on the main stage on the Democratic convention. Harris pushed back. That did not happen. How would you say Harris is handling this crucial demographic of Arab and Muslim voters?
What Harris has said, and what she has continually said, is that she condemns the violence on both sides. So she condemns the invasion of Israel by Hamas, and she has also been very forthright in saying that there is humanitarian suffering and that humanitarian aid must go to Gaza. How this plays out in the election is very tight. It's going to get, I think, even tighter until Election Day. Voting has already started, and it's proven to be a very tight race. And what I think is going to happen is that no vote is going to be left unturned, or no person is going to be left aside in this election. So whether it's Jewish voters, that Trump is trying to get the Jewish voters on his side, whether Kamala Harris is trying to encourage Arab American voters to vote for her, we're going to see a lot of this until November 5th.
All right, Matt, let's just talk a little bit more about those Jewish voters. Trump has made some blistering remarks on the issue. He said that Jewish voters who do not support him need to get their heads examined. He has insisted that he is their protector, and most recently suggested that if he loses, it will be their fault. Now, some say the comments are offensive. They will do nothing to win Jewish voters, but actually do the opposite. Your thoughts?
Well, first, a couple of responses. First is Trump making offensive comments. I'm shocked if your viewers are shocked by those statements. That's part and parcel of Donald Trump's persona ever since he first announced for the presidency. Look, the Democrats are in a big pickle here because they want to have their cake and eat it too. In that the Democrats say that they support Israel, but they're also trying to thread the needle because they don't want to alienate those Jewish voters and the far left Hamas caucus in the Democratic Party that actually supports the actions that Hamas did on October 7th. So they're in a big pickle. Donald Trump is pointing out the obvious, that this is a gentleman who moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This is a man that initiated the Abraham Accords that brought about more economic partnerships in the Middle East. And under Biden-Harris, the Middle East is near World War III, with Yemen, Hamas, Hezbollah, and now Iran 2 times attacking Israel. So much for that vaulted world superior world, or a more stable world that Joe Biden promised when he was elected. Anything but that is the case right now. The world is nearly in flames thanks to the Biden and Harris administration.
Jennifer, what do you think? Because Trump has previously struggled to secure Arab votes, so his focus really should be on those Jewish voters. But Trump not making much win with Jewish voters, would you say, with rhetoric like that?
I don't think it's a winning rhetoric. Many Jewish organizations have come out and said that it fans the flames of anti-Semitism. We'll see the results of it come election day. As I say, it's a very, very tight race. Every vote counts, and I think Jews as well as Arab Americans will be watching very closely what both Trump and Harris say leading up to the election.
All right. Now, Matt, the Biden administration has allowed a steady flow of weapons and aid to Israel to the tune of billions of dollars, as we know. No conditions have been set on that use. It can be seen as a failure to peace, but there are some analysts who actually suggest that this is no failure. This is the Biden administration pressing the reset button in the Middle East. At least that's what one of the former State Department officials who resigned because of the war said, that this is not simply a tragedy of errors. What do you think?
Well, I think that that's a joke on its face, and in reality, the Biden and Harris administration have limited the flow of weapons. They denied Israel the 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs that they originally requested. They've asked repeatedly for a ceasefire, even though Israel was attacked on October 7 by Hamas terrorists. By the way, in a coordinated attack with the Yemenis, who have closed down, for all intents and purposes, the Suez Canal, and by Hezbollah that has been launching rockets, all coordinated by Iran, which the Biden administration, through lax oil sanctions, has allowed hundreds of billions of dollars to go to the largest state sponsor of terror. So Anthony Blinken and his politicized State Department can say whatever they want, but the record shows otherwise. And the world knows that the Middle East is a far more dangerous place under Biden and Harris than it ever was under Donald Trump administration.
Jennifer, what do you think? Do you think that this is a deliberate attempt by the Biden administration to press that reset button in the Middle East? They're doing pretty much what they're doing, and this is not really a failure?
I think you have to go back to when Biden pulled out U.S. forces of Afghanistan, and he made a pledge in that speech that there would be no new boots on the ground in any wars in the Middle East or in Afghanistan. So I think sending weapons is a substitute for boots on the ground, and I think it's going to be very difficult for America not to get involved, especially as the war escalates between Israel and Iran.
All right, Jennifer and Matt, do stay with us. We'll come back to you in just a few seconds. Let's get our viewers a quick update on this next story. 4 years after the last U.S. election, and many Republicans are still struggling to admit that former President Donald Trump lost the White House in 2020. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton and Speaker Mike Johnson are the latest Republicans who denied Trump losing the election. In an NBC interview, Senator Tom Cotton questioned an NBC anchor on whether she could definitely prove that Trump lost the 2020 race. His remarks come on the heels of J.D. Vance's refusal to admit Trump's defeat during last week's debate with Tim Walz. Now, Jennifer and Matt still with us. Jennifer, to you first. What's the strategy here, if you can even call it that?
What's the strategy? Well, I think if Trump really did not lose the 2020 election, he would be the incumbent and not the former president. And I do think that this is a strategy to stir up MAGA support for legal battles for contests in certain states.
Matt, you're a Republican strategist. What do you think about all this talk of Trump having not lost the election?
Well, look, first of all, I mean, it's obvious that Joe Biden won the election, as Jennifer so rightly pointed out, because he's sitting in the Oval Office. But The fact that Tim Walz didn't answer a question, or that, excuse me, that JD Vance didn't answer a question posed by Tim Walz, uh, that's not a requirement in any debate. And I would point out that if you're going to hold him to that standard, neither did Tim Walz answer the question that JD Vance asked about government censorship. So again, this is just the American national news media that is obsessed with January 6th, and the majority of Americans at this point, they're beyond that. What they realize is that under the Biden and Harris economy, you pay more to live less, that every consumer staple is more expensive, gasoline costs more, the world is a much, much less safe place under the Biden and Harris administration. And more disturbingly, from a cultural standpoint, you have Tim Walz, voting to put tampons in the boys' bathroom in high schools in Minnesota, and Kamala Harris saying that she wants to provide government-funded sex change operations for people that are in this country illegally and for prisoners. So they're the real radicals here. And I think that that's why this election is where it is, and why Donald Trump right now, well, the polls show it's effectively tied in the 7 swing states. That means that Donald Trump is in the lead because he underperforms in polls and overperforms on the election day.
Jennifer, a quick reaction from you on what you just heard.
Well, I think Trump, although you say that he's really, great in so many ways, I think he is a liar, and he lies a lot, and he uses his position of power to take advantage of people. He has been discriminatory towards so many different categories of people throughout the United States, and he is chaotic and unpredictable, especially in foreign policy. And during his presidency, he did not even have the patience to sit through the daily security briefing. So I worry that if he takes office, what happens to the Middle East?
And yet, Jennifer, when he was president, we had no new wars. Contrary to Kamala Harris, the U.S. does have boots on the ground in the Middle East right now. We have troops in Iraq and in Syria, even though Kamala Harris misspoke or maybe lied in the debate on that. And you have the disastrous pullout from Afghanistan. So the world is much more in doubt and vulnerable under the weakness of the Biden and Harris administration. It was much more stable under Donald Trump. So you can say what you want, but the facts prove otherwise.
All right, guys, do stay with us. We want your reaction on another story that's unfolding right now, that Florida is gearing up, as you know, for what could be the biggest evacuation in 7 years as Hurricane Milton heads towards populated areas like Tampa and Orlando. This comes just 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene caused more than 200 deaths and catastrophic damage from Florida and other states. Florida has expanded its state of emergency as it braces for the storm, which is now strengthened and has been declared a Category 4 hurricane. Now, Jennifer, you've been tracking the story, and of course, Matt, you as well. We've heard a lot of misinformation coming in from Trump, Jennifer, talking about how funds for this for Hurricane Helene, at least, were not diverted to the right people, the people who've been affected in North Carolina and elsewhere, but actually diverted to problems on the southern border. What do you make of Trump's latest comment and his misinformation there?
Well, that's, I think, a classic Trump disinformation move. The FEMA funds were intended to go where they were intended to go, and they reached the people that they needed to reach. So Trump used it as a political stunt to further his campaign and to win over votes and to try and use the social media machine to push out lies about where the funding was going.
Except that it's not. It's an indisputable
Matt,
fact.
what do you think? Is this really going to win out?
Well, except that it's not. It's an indisputable fact that FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, spent $1.01 billion to fund the Biden and Harris open border policy. And Alexander Mayorkas, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, went on and said that they would have to request more money for the initial Hurricane Helene. The problem is that the federal government response to rural communities in North Carolina and Georgia, ironically enough, some of the most Republican counties and precincts in those two states, has been woefully slow. So they can say all they want is that we have the money, but the aid's not getting where it needs to go. FEMA was not prepared for this, but they were really prepared when they've let in 10 to 12 million people into our country illegally. So, yeah, it is a big deal. And just as Hurricane
But
Katrina
Matt, the
was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the money though that FEMA says it comes from a different pot entirely. Don't mix up the southern border issue with the aid going out for Hurricane Helene.
Their main job, Federal Emergency Management Agency. This was their main job, the hurricane. They took their eye off the ball and spent $1.01 billion on people in this country illegally because the Biden and Harris administration cares more for illegal immigrants than it does for certain American citizens. So it's a very easy connection to make, and you don't have to be a government expert to see that connection being made. And that's why people in Georgia and North Carolina are frustrated because the federal government is not doing what it needs to do.
Thanks very much indeed, Jennifer and Matt. All spent a lot of time with us here on NDTV this morning. Appreciate it, like always. Let's get you more now on Hurricane Helene that recently battered an all-important state going into this year's election. Of the 7 swing states, North Carolina is one battleground state where a win by Harris or Trump in November could open a crucial path to victory to the White House. A Democratic presidential candidate hasn't won North Carolina since Obama way back in 2008. Complicating matters, Hurricane Helene, one of the deadliest and costliest storms in U.S. history, continues to have to raise concerns and problems as aid is distributed and relief efforts continue. Now, Helene has left a trail of devastation with more than 6 months' worth of rain landing in parts of North Carolina. Let's get you more on the story and the impact on the upcoming elections. North Carolina State Senator Jay Chaudhry joins us now for more. Chaudhry is one of the few Democrats in the North Carolina State Senate, which is under Republican control. Senator Chaudhry, thank you very much for joining us. I know it's a tough time given what we saw with Helene, so appreciate you joining us this morning. Senator Chaudhry, now North Carolina is one of the 7 swing states that could decide the presidential election, like we've been saying. We are only a few weeks away from Election Day. How are things looking for things like polling booths that may have been affected, face possible damage? Is early voting on October 17th on track? Also, some people who voted in mail, that's those early mail-in ballots, are worried that their votes may have been washed away. What's the situation looking like on the ground?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Certainly our hearts and minds are with the people of Western North Carolina who have suffered unimaginable damage, and we continue to focus on rescuing, searching and rescuing those that are missing and need help. To answer your question about how the election will be administered, we are actually returning back for a session here in the North Carolina General Assembly this Wednesday, with an additional return back to the General Assembly 10 days later towards the end of October. And I suspect that we are going to address some of the issues that you have raised, because there have been ballots that have been mailed, that have been lost in the mail. We will probably look to make access to mail-in ballots easier. We will, I suspect, make it easier for people who do not live within their precincts or their districts to be able to vote outside their precincts and districts. And there's a question of whether someone submits a mail-in ballot after Election Day, whether that will be allowed to be included in the vote count. All of these are efforts really to address the disaster that we're facing in Western North Carolina.
A lot of people will be closely watching to see what you decide in that meeting there. Now, several parts of Western North Carolina that were flooded by Helene are largely Republican. In 2020, Trump won, as you know, over 60% of the vote in these North Carolina counties that were declared so-called disaster zones or areas. Now, in a scenario that these areas could see low voter turnout and Trump could lose, are you worried that Trump may turn these counties into a battleground to launch accusations of a stolen election?
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves in what Donald Trump will say about the election without us going through the election administration. This is a Republican dominated General Assembly. I really think they will do everything they can to make sure that it is easier for folks living in Western North Carolina to have access to the ballot. So I remain optimistic that we will make the changes necessary so that people are able to vote even during a time of crisis. Certainly, the President Trump's misinformation with disaster relief doesn't help things, but I'm trying to remain confident that the election will be administered in a fair way that people in Western North Carolina have access to the ballot.
Indeed, we just spent some time talking to our guest previously on the disinformation coming across from Donald Trump on the issue of aid reaching the rightful people in your state, right, like North Carolina. Thanks, State Senator Jay Chaudhry, joining us from North Carolina. Appreciate your time. Unfortunately, leaving it there for now. That's it for US Election Watch. I'm Allister D'Souza in Washington, D.C.
Start earning cash back today. Sign up to Quidco. Get cash back every time you shop on over 5,000 brands. It always pays to Quidco.
To the donkey sanctuary, because terrible things are happening to donkeys. Please, do something incredible for them right now.
It's great to be helping out before my first grandchild arrives. Which reminds me.
Welcome to British Seniors, the UK's #1 rated provider of over 50s life insurance. We're proud to offer our seniors lifetime guarantee. With 100% of claims having been paid, we guarantee your premiums will never go up and that you'll speak to one of our specialists in the UK. Plus, when you sign up, you'll receive a £135 gift card.
Be proud to protect your loved ones with British Seniors. To get a free quote today, call our UK team or visit britishseniors.co.uk.
When I woke up, they said, "Alyssa, you've got leukemia." We found out that the chemo wasn't working. So at that point, it was like, I'm gonna die. My consultant was looking for these clinical trials and she found this one at Great Ormond Street. I'm cancer-free now.
Curing Alyssa was a world first, but cancer is still the biggest killer of children in the UK. Will you help us do more? Search Gosh Care to give £3 a month and help build a new children's cancer centre at Great Ormond Street Hospital, a home for breakthrough research with world-class facilities to help beat cancer for more children. Together, with your kind support, we can help save lives and transform children's cancer care for decades to come. Text CARE to 70125 to give £3 a month and help build our new children's cancer centre. Together, we can beat cancer for more children.
Dealing with my lot means making smart choices. And with our family growing, I want to make sure they're protected. That's why I'm with Smart Insurance.
Just like families, not all life insurance is the same. That's why we offer the Smart Family Guarantee. We guarantee a straightforward application process, award-winning service you can trust, and cover from day one. Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card.
To get a free quote today, call our specialist UK team or visit smartinsurance.co.uk.
We're talking Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. program tonight. It's been exactly 1 year since the horrific terror attacks on Israel, which resulted in the deaths of approximately 1,195 to 1,200 Israelis, with variations in counts potentially due to the complexity of identifying remains and the inclusion of foreign workers and other nationals. Additionally, 251 individuals were taken hostage during this event. Of these hostages, 101 are believed to still be in Gaza, with some confirmed dead over time. Now, these figures illustrate the scale of the event's impact on Israel, marking one of the deadliest attacks in its history. 1 year later, West Asia is on edge. Israel says it will attack Iran after Iran's latest ballistic missile attacks. Israel, for its part, continues to intensify its bombing of Beirut, Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah, which has been hitting northern Israel with rockets. Tonight, the lowdown of the situation, with live reports from NDTV's Mohammad Ghazali in Lebanon and experts in Israel and elsewhere. The world watches on with fear. This could be one of our most dangerous times yet. Next up on the program, a full reset of the relationship between India and the Maldives. After a year of being in the doldrums, India and the Maldives, it appears, are back on track in their bilateral ties, with both sides releasing a vision for a comprehensive economic and maritime security partnership. What does it all mean? How important is this relationship? I'll be doing a deep dive on that, but first the headlines. The CBI files the charge sheet in the Kolkata rape and murder case, says Sanjoy Roy raped and murdered the junior doctor. They don't mention gang rape. The Trinamool Congress says the Kolkata police probe was correct. The Indian Air Force air show event in Chennai ends in tragedy with 5 people dead, hundreds affected. The opposition blames the state government for mismanagement. The DMK says arrangements were based on the Air Force's demands. The BJP says the party would prepare a national register of citizens in Jharkhand if it is voted to power there, claiming illegal immigration from Bangladesh is a major issue. But let's turn our attention now. It's been the first anniversary since the horrific war began in West Asia with terrorists attacking Israel. But now that war has spread, and certainly one of the key areas which has been badly impacted is Lebanon, with continuous Israeli attacks on the city of Beirut, one of the largest cities and one of the most ancient cities on earth. My colleague Ghazali has been reporting from there and joins us now. For starters, Ghazali, what is the immediate ground situation where you're reporting?
See, I'm in the heart of the city of Beirut, in the city center right now, and the attacks in Beirut is happening on the southern and northern areas. The southern Beirut, or the southern part of Lebanon, shares border with the occupied territory of Palestine, and there a ground combat is going on between the Israeli forces and the Hezbollah fighters. But right here in Beirut, the areas which are under attack is close to the airport area where the attacks are happening. There's another area called Dahieh, which I've been reporting and I have covered from there, that how a densely populated area with around 7 lakh people, they have all left the area. Most of the areas have got vacant. People have, the residents of that particular area have left it because it has faced intense bombardment from the occupied Palestinian territory forces. Right now, there is the bigger concern for the government over here is about the displacement of people. People who had moved into Lebanon a decade ago due to the unrest in Syria have now been left yet again to be the refugees, and they're now moving towards Syria again. But the forces from occupied Palestinian territory have also damaged the road which connects Syria and Lebanese border. So the ground, and even now you can hear, I don't know if you can hear or not, but I can still hear the sounds of the drone in the sky. We are sitting in an open area right now. And the explosions can be heard very close to this place because we are sitting very close to the airport. And any area near the airport is still coming under the aerial bombardment. Then there are certain areas away from the city in the suburban areas of Beirut which are coming under intense attack. Many people have been displaced. Millions of people are moving from one location to another. The city areas of Beirut are and the hotels and the colleges, the schools, hospitals, they have all been it's become a makeshift shelter home for these people, with local NGOs and international NGOs taking care of them. But since morning, it appeared that today is October 7th, marking 1 year of Israel-Hamas war. But Hezbollah chose to fire rockets into Israel in the Haifa area, which sort of injured around 11 citizens there. As of now, the situation is very tense here because people don't know that who will go for a ceasefire, because despite repeated attempts from the global leaders, there has been no ceasefire, and more new fronts of wars are emerging every day. It started with Gaza, and now it's Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran as well. Right now, the situation is tense. There is an eerie silence in the city, but the areas closer to the airport, the area closer to the border of Israel is facing intense bombardment. And then alerts are also issued here as well whenever there is a loud explosion in the nearby areas.
Ghazali, do we have any idea of casualties?
Casualties till now, today there has been casualties in double digits. Exact figure has not yet been shared. The exact figure comes at the end of the day by the Ministry of Health. But till now, since this war has started between Lebanon and Israel, there have been more than 1,500 people who have been killed and many more injured.
What is the condition of hospitals?
The condition of hospitals is still fine in the Beirut city, but the problem is with the displacement of people who are moving on foot, because anywhere they're moving, there are a lot of bombardment in the suburban areas. So a lot of people have shifted into the city areas, into the hotels. Hospitals are doing fine with the collaboration with the NGOs and all, and that is why the hospital situation is still working fine.
What about electricity and basic civic supplies?
The basic civic supplies are also doing fine in the urban areas, but in the suburban areas, it is still a big challenge because there have been attacks on the power facilities as well. And also during the evening hours after sunset, in most of the areas, people turn off the light, fearing that perhaps if they turn on the lights, that area will come under aerial bombardment. So this is the situation right now in the suburban areas and areas close to the Beirut city center.
Can you describe for us what it was like reporting at night when many of these attacks took place?
See, Vishnu, basically the areas, there are many areas which are marked as the stronghold of Hezbollah. You can't enter there without their permission. There is the area called Dahiye, which is the place where the assassination of the leader happened. On the very first day after the assassination, only one photographer was allowed to get into that particular area, and after that, the entry is barred. There are a strong hold of that group, which is spread over across the city and around the outskirts, and that is where the intense bombardment or attack is happening. In areas where there are residential buildings in that particular area, that is very tough. And then you can only move around with the permission of the Hezbollah group or from their media team. Despite having passes, you can't move around in the city like this, reporting about it. And you're under constant watch that you are not moving into those areas which are sensitive, like the southern Lebanon, where the ground combat is happening with the Israeli forces. Nobody is allowed in that particular area, and people are displaced from there. The people who are moving out of that place are also facing aerial bombardment. So it's a very tense situation. Until and unless you have an approval, you know the exact location where you want to go. Moving around in this particular on the outskirts of the city is very dangerous.
All right, Ghazali, thank you for joining us, and please be careful in that very, very tense situation. I'm now joined by Edward Joseph, Senior Fellow and Lecturer at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, Adam Scott Bellos, the CEO of the Israel Innovation Fund, Zaki Zaidi, a former researcher at the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis in India and a Middle East expert, and Ambassador Ashok Sajjana. Thank you all very much for being with us. Adam Scott Bellos, let me come to you first. What in your mind is the end game for Israel as far as Lebanon is concerned? I know ostensibly it is to get rid of Hezbollah once and for all, but that's not going to be something that can happen soon. Are we looking at operations which can go on indefinitely at this stage?
I don't think that we're looking at operations that can go on indefinitely, just like I don't think Israel is looking at operations that would go on indefinitely in Gaza as well. The goal is clearly to eradicate Islamism from the region, which has plunged the region into darkness for many, many, many years, culminating in what we saw on October 7th. And I think that's extremely important to recognize, that the Israeli goal vis-a-vis the attack starting on October 7th has been to finally and utterly eradicate this eschatological apocalyptic ideology of what the world should be, made in the image of some type of radical Islamic, dreamland. I think it's very important to realize that the Israelis have very long-term goals for the stability and the prosperity of the region. And as many people have seen, prior to October 7th, the Abraham Accords had begun to bring the Middle East into a new era of brotherhood and business cooperation and prosperity. And we're on the brink of really solving the wider Arab-Israeli conflict, which should have culminated in a Saudi Arabian peace agreement. So I think it's just very naive to think about the lack of idea of what the Israelis would like to accomplish. It's a very clear goal, and it has been, and it has been stated over and over again since the beginning of the Israel-Iran war, which this is. And to call this the Israel-Hamas war, the Israel-Hezbollah war, is just an incorrect observation of the geopolitical and military realities on the ground right now. This is the Israel-Iran war. It's the one-year anniversary of the start of the Israel-Iran war. And to think that there is any other goal other than allowing the rest of the Middle East to live in the same type of prosperity that Israelis have lived in over the last, let's say, 40 years or 50 years since 1967, it would just be very obtuse to think that that isn't the goal of the Israeli people and the Israeli government.
All right, Adam,
I just need to make that very clear.
Adam, hold that thought. Let me go across to Nick Kolyohen. He's a senior journalist reporting the situation on the ground. Nick, thanks very much for being with us. What's the situation in northern Israel?
So now Israel strives to destroy Hezbollah as it did to Hamas, because Israel understands it can't live with its citizens of the north of the country evacuated from their homes for a year now, and their homes constantly bombarded. They are destroyed by Hezbollah terrorists, and no country could live in this kind of reality. So now Israel is intensifying their fight against Hezbollah, and they have many targets that the Israeli intel over the years gathered information about them, and now they are strives to destroy especially the long missiles of Hezbollah, the precise missiles, because with those ones they can target Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and all Israel. And that's why now Israel understands after the 7th of October, it couldn't live with a neighbor that has so many firepower and do nothing. That's why now Israel going all in its strive to destroy all the proxies of Iran. And it's not just Hezbollah in Lebanon, it's also the Houthis in Yemen and also the militias in Iraq and in Syria, that all of them are working with Iran.
Nick, could you tell us what's happening behind you? Today is a particularly poignant day in Israel, where the families of those who've lost so much, I mean, the thoughts of people around the world are with them. Could you tell us a little bit about what's happening and, and how the memory of what happened a year back is perhaps first and foremost in the minds of people in your country?
Yes, in Israel, this is a big tragedy. After the Holocaust, this is the second biggest tragedy in the history of the Jewish people. 1,200 people were murdered, slaughtered by the terrorists of Hamas. Many of them children, women, elderly, innocent people that were in their homes in pajamas. Some of them were at music festival. They did nothing wrong. But the Hamas terrorists came with one mission: to kill, to kidnap, to rape, and to destroy as many as possible of the Israeli citizens, Israeli homes, Israeli cities. And now Israel is commemorating 1 year to this tragedy. And here behind me, the families of those victims are gathering here for the main event that will mark 1 year of this tragedy. And they will remember to the world and to the Israeli government also that still 101 Israeli women, men, elderly, children in the captivity in the tunnels held by Hamas terrorists. They have almost no food, no water, even not the air to breathe in those tunnels. There is almost no air there and it's dark. And